Good Sunday evening. Week 7 in the NAIA in the 2024 football season. It is now in the books. And so officially now we found out a few things that have gone on. Of course, there was a Friday game. There looked to be a game on Sunday. That one got canceled. And we'll talk about all that and more tonight. As a matter of fact, if you have a favorite team in the NAIA, there's a really good chance, unless they had a bye week, that we'll at least acknowledge that team tonight. We're talking about the top 5 performances in the NAIA in week 7, and we'll go beyond the 5 as well. Lots to talk about tonight. Have to tell you that I am feeling better every single day and every single weekend, so I really appreciate you all stopping by and watching the show. Hey, let us know from where you're watching tonight in the chat, and if you're watching the replay a little bit later on, that's all right. Let us know in the comment section too. We want to know. We want to grow the channel, and we appreciate you being a part of it tonight. So here we go. Canceled games for week 7. Weber International and Thomas. That game looked to be played on Sunday, and we thought it was going to be played on Sunday for a while. It actually did get canceled. Warner at number 1 Kaiser did get canceled. And Southeastern at Florida Memorial, it did get canceled. I heard that from Sports Information Department. I saw elsewhere that it might have been postponed, but I believe I'm going to go ahead and take the word of the SID and say that one got canceled as well. So 8 teams in the Sun Conference that perform or are participating in Sun Conference sponsored football. 6 of them had their game canceled. Ave Maria on a bye week, and St. Thomas, well, we'll just start there. Number 6, St. Thomas blew out Fort Lauderdale. No question about it. 80-0. That's the final score. Enough said. How about Friday's game? Number 5, Dort taking on Mount Marty, and the Defenders go to 5-0. The number 5 Defenders going to 5-0 with a 35-17 victory on Friday night. Dort's Nick Wellen, 20 carries for 157 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Grant Hickson also had 6 tackles, 1 interception, broke up a couple passes as well. So that was for the Defenders. A little bit more ahead on their schedule, and we're going to talk about that in upcoming weeks as well. Moving from the GPAC, how about moving over to the AAC? Reinhardt goes to 3-4, gets back on the winning track following that loss to Pikeville last week. 1-1 now in the AAC with a 36-26 victory over Point. Quintravious Teasley for Point, though, 8 catches, 188 yards receiving, couple of receiving touchdowns. However, the Eagles get the win, and they are not out of the race. But we'll talk about Pikeville here in just a moment. Union Commonwealth, 21. St. Andrews, nothing. Union Commonwealth, the Bulldogs, still getting used to saying Union Commonwealth. I know it's going to take a little bit. That's all right. Bear with me on this thing, too. Want to say Union. Taj Jackson for the Bulldogs, 20 carries, 161 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, all 3 scores for the Bulldogs in this game. And if you ask about this too, one of the reasons we do Beyond the 5 is because there's some pretty good performances as well. There's just some that seem to stand out. So that's our top 5. 19 consecutive losses now for St. Andrews. The Knights trying to turn things around. How about a team that's got to go in the other direction? Dickinson State in the North Star Swan Song, 39 consecutive North Star wins. That's right. The Blue Hawks victors this weekend over Dakota State. Both teams coming in 4-1. Dickinson State now moving to 5-1. 38-21 the final score as the Blue Hawks forced 6 turnovers, 5 picks, and a fumble recovery. Samaj Clark, 7 catches, 127 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns. And also, how about Jaden Hartwell on defense? 6 tackles, 2 interceptions. One of those was a pick 6. So that is from the North Star. The paint bucket game, also in the North Star. Valley City State saying, Jamestown, go ahead and go on Division 2. We're going to take the win on this one. 125th meeting in this series. Valley City State now up 65, 55, and 5 in the overall series record. Avery Thorsgaard just continuing to roll. 19 for 26 passing, 136 passing yards. Did not have any passing touchdowns, but he also had 23 carries for 119 yards and 1 rushing touchdown for Thorsgaard. Xavier Westbrook also with a 96-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Valley City State 38, Jamestown 7. That was the final and the paint bucket game. Let's go to the Mid-South now. Georgetown in this one, and the Mid-South is just a mess right now. It really is. A couple of upsets. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but we start with Georgetown. Homecoming in Georgetown, and the Tigers took care of the Faulkner Eagles 45-14. That was the final. Georgetown got up 45-0 after the third quarter and just basically coasted from there on in. 504 yards of total offense for the Tigers, led by Darius Neal, 14 carries, 114 yards, one rushing touchdown, averaging 8.1 yards per carry. Not a bad night or afternoon, as the case may be, for Darius Neal. Chad Holleran, 6 tackles. He also had a pick 6 along the way. We talked about some upsets. We'll get to them more in just a moment. Let's kind of just go around some different conferences. St. Xavier, 4-2 now after a 45-14 victory over Defiance, and the Yellow Jackets fall to 2-4 on the season. St. Xavier had 17, count them, 17 players carry the ball on Saturday, got up, stayed up, and 17 players carrying the ball. Stuart Ross, how about this? 18 for 20 passing, 134 passing yards. Now, don't stay on the passing yards as much. 134, Ross has put up higher numbers than that. But 18 for 24 passing, 90% completion rate on the day. How about that for Ross? Oh, he also had 4 carries for 24 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, had a couple of passing touchdowns as well. No interceptions on the day. St. Xavier also, Chris Swain, the linebacker, patrolling that middle of the field and making sure he knew where the ball was. 4 tackles, 2 interceptions. One of them was a pick 6, and he broke up a pass as well. To the GPAC as Dakota Wesleyan, 47, Doane, 21. Carter Robinson, big day for him. 17 for 27 passing, 155 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, no picks, and also the dual threat there. 11 carries, 145 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns as well. So Robinson helping out Dakota Wesleyan. The Tigers lost the first 4 games, have won the last 2 to move to 2-4 on the season. They're hosting undefeated Dort next week. Carter Robinson with 4 touchdowns, which he was responsible for the day. Dave, nice to see you checking in. Roll Stangs. We'll get to the Stangs here in just a moment. We moved from the GPAC, though, back to the Mid-South, and we talked about some upsets here. How about this one? Cumberland's 4-2 now over Lindsey Wilson, 3-2. Lindsey Wilson picking up its first Mid-South Conference loss, and Cumberland's lost to Bethel last week, clearly not out of the Mid-South race, as Drew Gregg went 15 for 22 passing. I'll get this right. 144 passing yards, 68.2 completion rating, 1 passing touchdown. So Cumberland's now 4-2 and alive and well in the Mid-South race. Georgetown 1-0 in the Mid-South. Lindsey Wilson now 1-1 in the Mid-South. Bethel was undefeated in the Mid-South. Bethel was undefeated overall until Saturday when Cumberland took care of business there. Cumberland now 5-1 and at or near the top of the Mid-South. Bethel now at or near the top of the Mid-South. 21-14 the final score. Cumberland over Bethel, as for the first time this season, the Wildcats fall. Cumberland led by Luke Holloway, 10 for 18 passing, 136 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, no picks. Oh, he also carried the ball 17 times for 96 yards on the day and had a rushing touchdown as well. Bethel couldn't get it done on third down, 3 of 12 on the afternoon. Really, that's one of those stats that makes a difference. How about going over to the Sooner Athletic Conference for just a bit now? And Langston rallying in not 1 but 2 games recently and taking care of business late, as the Lions were 1-2 just 2 weeks ago, now 3-2 as they go on the road to Goodwill in no man's land and pick up a 35-31 victory, and they had a rally to do it in the second half. Langston trailed 31-14 to the Aggies at halftime, 21 unanswered points in the second half, the 3rd straight win after those 2 losses. And by the way, one of them to a Division II team in Central Oklahoma. Langston led by Torrance Bardell, 20 for 39 passing, 405 passing yards on the day, 4 passing touchdowns, 1 pick, 9 for 33 rushing as well. And he found Ivory Wilwright not once, not twice, but 3 times on the day for touchdowns. 3 of his 6 catches on the day were for touchdowns, 136 receiving yards, 22.7 yards per catch for Will Wright. Langston moving to 3-2. Waylon Baptist. And you got to give credit to Coach Hinojosa down there at in Plainview. Waylon now 3-3 on the season. This is a program that had struggled for a while under new management now in the second season now for the coach, and 3-3 on the year, 27-7 over Nelson, the artists formerly known as Southwestern Assemblies of God University. Nelson got on the board first, and then after that, it was all Waylon. Davian Guajardo, 16 for 24 passing, 66.7% on the day, 250 passing yards, 1 touchdown passing, also carried the ball into the end zone, 6 carries for 19 yards as well. Staying with the Sooner for just a little bit longer here. How about this one? Louisiana Christian getting back in the win column. Dalen Charles, 22 carries, 202 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. That was enough for the Wildcats. A 31-10 victory over North American, keeping the Stallions in the loss column, 0-5 now on the season. And it was all Ottawa over Simpson. Now, this is for the Red Hawks of Simpson. It's going to be the Frontier Conference next year. They have 6 Frontier games on the schedule this year, not actually official members of the conference as of yet. However, taking on OUAZ and the Spirit 76, Simpson 14. It's been a little bit of a struggle here in year 1 for Simpson. I have no doubt, though, that the Red Hawks are going to find their way. OUAZ, 475 yards of total offense in the first half. They were up 49-0, 674 yards of total offense for the game. And the Spirit scored the first 76 points as well. That's right. We're beyond the 5 here on the top 5 performances of the weekend, talking about some more that just didn't quite make that final 5 and make the cut there. Luke Giron, how about this one? And this is a big number. This one almost got Giron into the top 5 just on one number alone. How about this? 21 for 23 passing, 363 yards. It's not the 363 that did it, although that's very impressive. Of course, you're taking on an opponent that clearly you have the upper hand on here. It's the 21 of 23 passing, 91.3% completion rate on the day for Luke Giron. And that's big time. 4 passing touchdowns, no picks on the day. That's one of those things too. You talk about these things and just completing 21 of 23 passing with nobody defending your receivers. That's kind of tough to do sometimes just in the warm-ups, but he did it during a game as well. 91.3% completion rating. To the Frontier Conference now, where it's homecoming in LeGrand. Eastern Oregon moves to 3-3 now on the season. 28-21 over MSU Northern. The Lights sticking around in this one. Got to score late to make it a little bit closer than what it was. Brody McMillan, 21 carries, 102 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Staying in the Frontier, Southern Oregon, 5-1, getting back on the winning side. The number 13 Raiders over Rocky Mountain, 54-14. Blake Asiuto, 21 for 36 passing, 355 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks. Gunnar Yates, by the way, continuing to roll. He's tops in the NAIA right now with 17 rushing touchdowns on the season. 3 of them came on Saturday as he had 23 carries for 84 yards on the ground. And the other big one on the day, well, I say the other big one. We haven't gotten to that one, as you can probably imagine. A couple of games we haven't mentioned yet. They're definitely in the top 5. How about this one? Top 12 matchup. Number 7, Montana Western at home. It's Bulldog Bash weekend in Dillon, taking on and hosting number 12, Montana Tech. And the Bulldogs stay with just 1 loss on the season, 27-21, 3rd consecutive win in the series over Montana Tech. Now, the Ore Diggers, Landers Smith, 25 carries, 163 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. But it's the Bulldogs, led by Michael Palandri, 20 of 34 passing, 238 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, threw an interception as well. Also had 12 carries for 79 yards, had a rushing touchdown, which proved to be the game-winning touchdown early in the 4th quarter. He's averaging 334.8 passing yards per game. That's good enough for 2nd in the NAIA. And Braden Swank, 2 interceptions, 3 breakups, helped to shut down Blake Thielen on the day, and that's not easy to do. We do know that Arkansas Baptist and Texas College played. We don't know what the final score of the game was, and I'm not sure anyone does. So if we find out something else, we will. We're heading toward the top 5 right now. A little bit more off the field news, and we found this out this week. The Sun Conference and the Mid-South Conference, this according to a release from the Sun Conference, have unveiled a football scheduling partnership for the 2025 and 2026 seasons. This collaboration will allow teams from both conferences to fill early season non-conference scheduling gaps by facing opponents from the other leagues. Now, the Mid-South and the Appalachian had been doing this the last couple of years. Not sure what's going to happen to the Appalachian in this, but we'll know more a little bit later on. All right. We are moving now to the top 5. So if you haven't heard your team mentioned yet, and because there have been so many bye week games going on, or bye weeks, how you want to say this? It's one bye week. But there have been so many teams who've been on their bye week. How's that sound? I don't know. I'm not sure that I like the way that sounds either. That's okay. Anyway, let's just move on. If your team hasn't been mentioned yet, pretty sure you're going to hear about them in the top 5. So let's unveil the top 5. How about that? Here we go. Top 5 performances, and we are going to start where we started last week with Pikeville. Pikeville got its first win of the season last week, and it was Lee Kirkland who led the way. Of course, it's going to be Lee Kirkland who leads the way again. 66-34 over Kentucky Christian. Pikeville now at 2-0 in the Appalachian, leading the way, and it's all Pikeville from here on out because they control their own destiny. Win out, you make it to the playoffs, even though you started the season 0-4. And Coach Phipps has to know that as well. You just keep talking to your team and say, okay, we lost the first 4 games of the season, didn't like it. Who would? You got to win when it comes time to win, and playing in conference play is exactly what they're doing, and they're winning ball games. Win a big one over Kentucky Christian, 66-34, 1,150 yards of total offense between the two. And Pikeville set a new program record with 40 first downs in this game. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Kentucky Christian because with 34 points on the game, there were a couple of players that did well for the Knights. Jet Ingle, 33 of 53 passing, 488 passing yards on the day. So if you're Pikeville, you look at that number and say, we've got some things to fix. Yes, we're 2-0 in conference play, but we have some things to fix. Ingle, 488 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, but he did throw 3 interceptions as well. And the Bears got into his grill, I guess, on defense there. Jarrell Simmons, 10 catches, 243 yards receiving, and 3 receiving touchdowns for Kentucky Christian. So we talk about that, mention that as well, but let's talk about Pikeville. Lee Kirkland, 35 of 51 passing, 354 passing yards, just shy of 70% passing completion rate on the day, 3 passing touchdowns through an interception, 11 carries, 10 rushing yards, but he had a couple of rushing touchdowns as well. Lee Kirkland on the day with 5 touchdowns for which he was responsible. And Ammon Williams did try to get a pronunciation on that. Didn't get anything back. 22 carries, 153 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Oh, by the way, he had 4 catches for 30 yards and 1 receiving touchdown as well. Williams responsible for 4 touchdowns on the day. But Kirkland in back-to-back weeks makes our top 5. Moving along, St. Francis of Indiana, 77 over Lawrence Tech, 14. St. Francis scored the final 7 touchdowns of the day. Joshua Kulka, 15 for 19 passing, better than 75% passing completion, 288 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns. Had no interceptions on the day. 2 of them, by the way, went to McCall Ray. He had 3 catches for 158 yards. Let me say that again. McCall Ray had 3 catches for 158 yards. That is averaging 52.67 yards per catch. There we go. 2 of them were for touchdowns. Congratulations, though, to Joshua Kulka and the quarterback leading the way for St. Francis, Indiana. College of Idaho Andy Peters doing what Andy Peters does. 25 of 32 passing for 355 passing yards, 78.1% completion rate on the day, 5 passing touchdowns, no picks. All 5 of his touchdowns were to 5 different receivers. He had a couple of carries for 27 yards as well. College of Idaho now 5-2, taking care of business after a couple of early losses, staying in the hunt in the Frontier Conference. 52-17 over Arizona Christian and College of Idaho. The Yotes get the win. Morningside staying undefeated in GPAC play. 5-1 overall. And a cast of characters. And by the way, you see those last two. I'm going to mention a lot of folks because some big wins, but some big names taking care of business. 52-7. You really expect that from Morningside in this game over Hastings. Morningside, the number 8 team in the country, with the win. Hastings shut down on defense by Morningside, by the way. Did not successfully convert on third down in 12 attempts. So you got to give some credit there to the Mustangs on defense. Zach Chevalier, 28 of 40 passing. Almost said 70 passing. It's 70% passing completion rate for Chevalier. 441 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. Chevalier now currently with 21 passing touchdowns. That's tied for first in the NAIA. 404.7 passing yards per game. That's alone in first in the NAIA. And he has some pretty good receivers, and we'll talk about them now. Drew Sellen, I think Dave knows Drew, possibly. Anyway, 12 catches, 226 receiving yards on the day, 2 receiving touchdowns. Third time this season he's had a game in which he's had multiple receiving touchdowns. 7 receiving touchdowns on the season. That's tied for 4th in the NAIA. And it's his second game this year with at least 200 yards receiving. So a big day again for Drew Sellen. But also when Chevalier's finding receivers out there in a Mustangs uniform, he also found Lennox Brown. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you and you're just tuning in and saying, man, I think you've talked about Lennox Brown before, I have. It's because he split time last season with Cash Parker in the quarterback position, and he was running the ball. Well, now he's receiving the ball. So I think he's pretty happy for that passing game this season as well. 7 catches for Brown, 107 yards receiving, had 1 receiving touchdown. Oh, and by the way, he has 7 receiving touchdowns on the season as well, tied with his teammate Drew Sellen, tied with about 6 or 7 other players at 7 receiving touchdowns on the season, number 4 in the NAIA in that category. Big time win for Morningside. They've got some big games coming up, but 5-1 now on the season, and Morningside with the 52-7 win over Hastings. And Morningside at number 8. How about Indiana Wesleyan at number 3? On the road at number 10, Marion. And this had all the makings of a top 10 battle. Number 3 on the road at number 10 in conference play. This one could be a big one. Marion undefeated hosting this game. The Knights undefeated no more, and there's no question about it. 77-21, the Wildcats with a big-time victory in this one. Indiana Wesleyan now 6-1 on the year. 1,105 yards of total offense between the two. IWU had 742 of them. Oh, and by the way, 501 yards of offense in the first half alone for the Wildcats. It's the 3rd straight victory over a ranked opponent for Indiana Wesleyan, and they've done it pretty well. Scored 38 points, then 39 points. Well, let's see. What's 38 plus 39? Oh, the quick math on this one says 77. Yeah, let's just score 77 in our next game. We'll get those two and take care of it all in one. 77-21 over Marion, led by Kyle Antoine. 20 of 25 passing, 80% completion rate on the day, 302 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. The air game, the passing game, it's great for Indiana Wesleyan against Marion. But wait, there's more. The ground game as well for the Wildcats. Ryan Whitwell in this one, 12 carries, 153 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Roosevelt Cash, 11 carries, 117 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. All Wildcats, all the time. The number 3 team in the country. Now, by the way, they're not going to move up. Grandview on a bye week, and Kaiser game canceled. Kaiser's the number 1 team in the country. Until otherwise noted, they're going to stay the number 1 team in the country. Grandview, not going to give up any ground on a bye week, even though this was a big, big, big win. Grandview, by the way, still undefeated. Indiana Wesleyan with that 1 loss there. So there you go. Fred, and let's go ahead and let's bring this one up there, because we do know the Wildcats did make some adjustments as they went along, put some other players in later on in this game. Defense held Marion to just 1 rushing yard till they took the starters out in the third quarter. Yeah, Fred, the defense took care of business as well. I think when you're holding Marion to just 21 points on the day, and there were a lot of things that went on in this game. I mean, it was all Indiana Wesleyan all the time. Marion had opportunities early on, but I mean, Indiana Wesleyan struck first, struck early. I think the Wildcats got underneath the Knight's skin in this one, and it was just really all but in the books in the first half. Again, 501 yards. And you mentioned there, Fred, 1 yard rushing until the starters come out in the third quarter. So a big, did I mention big? Big game and a big win for Indiana Wesleyan. Now, that brings me to a programming note, because tomorrow I'll have the opportunity to visit with Coach Andrew Rohde right here on Midwest Sportsnet. So, Fred, I think you and some other folks may want to tune in for that one. We'll have that. It's not going to be live. It'll be recorded, but I will upload it as quickly as possible. Likely will be uploaded before 11 o'clock Central Time, definitely before noon Central Time tomorrow. So tune in for that one. We'll have a chance to visit with Coach Rohde, and we want to hear what he has to say, not only about that game, but you know what? It's another big game next week, too. Indiana Wesleyan homecoming in Marion, not at Marion the University, Marion, Indiana. Homecoming for Indiana Wesleyan, and it's really, I don't know that it gets much easier. The Trojans from Taylor are rolling this year, and they're going to come into town 5-1. It'll be 2 opposing styles, so we'll see how the defense plays out in this one. Big bang, big game. Could be a big bang. I don't know. Big game next week, as it'll be Taylor and Indiana Wesleyan. And Fred, I know that you have a lot of interest in this game as well. But don't forget, tomorrow we have on Midwest Sportsnet, we will have an opportunity to interview Coach Andrew Rohde from Indiana Wesleyan. Later in the day, too, we'll have another video dropped online as we get a chance to visit with Coach Paul Hansen from Mid-America Nazarene. The Pioneers are undefeated right now and heading into their second Heart South Division game this coming weekend. It was the Hearts bye week this week, conference-wide, but we'll get a chance to talk with Coach Paul Hansen, and I know he has a lot to talk about too, because the numbers are just rolling in Olathe right now. Another big season, and they've moved along 9-2 last year. On the outside looking in on the playoffs, it's well documented how I felt about that. Doesn't matter. We will just go from there and move on along. So tomorrow, 2 videos that will drop over the course of the day. We get a chance to visit with Coach Andrew Rohde from Indiana Wesleyan. We get a chance to visit with Coach Paul Hansen from Mid-America Nazarene. And I think that's going to do it. Top 5 performances, and we are at the 29-minute mark right now. So we'll try to get it right around 30 minutes. Lee Kirkland, Joshua Kulka, if I said that name correctly, Andy Peters, Zach Chevalier, Drew Sellen, Lennox Brown, Kyle Antoine, Ryan Whitwell, and Roosevelt Cash, responsible for our top 5 performances in Week 7 in the NAIA football season. We got a lot more to cover. A lot more football coming up, and of course we cover more than just football here, but it's football season right now, so we're going to go strong in that area and just keep talking about it here on Midwest Sportsnet. We like to talk about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond. Finally, I would encourage you, if you have not already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. I really have no idea what it does from an algorithm standpoint, but I know it really is pretty cool. And it's encouraging, and I think it helps. And you know what? You could join too. You could become a member. We would appreciate that. Those things help us along the way as well. There's a join button there if you're watching us on YouTube. I think that's the only place this is going out right now. So there's a join button. Hey, why not? Just go ahead and join the channel, and it's an investment in Midwest Sports Net. And I really do think it's an investment in small college sports as a whole. Fred, let's go ahead and throw this one up here really quickly. I like this a lot. I enjoy talking to coaches along these lines. And if you follow the channel at all, then you know this is really what the channel's all about. Coach Rohde is not just an incredible coach, also a great man of God that develops solid men that live for Christ. And again, if you follow the channel, you know those are the things you're going to hear about right here on Midwest Sports Net. So, Fred, thanks for telling us about that. And I've recognized that as well from my visits with him. And I know we're going to get to visit a little bit more on Monday. All right. I don't know if there's anything else. If not, then a shout out to Dave and Fred for being in the chat while we're live. And maybe you're watching us on the replay as well. If you've been watching us live, you're still here to the end. Thank you very much. I can't tell you what that means to me. If you've been watching the replay and you're here at this point in time, you're still watching us, you're a trooper, but you did it for only 31 minutes. We've gone much, much longer than that. I praise God for my health every day, and I consider it a privilege to get to visit with you. So we will be back with more. Looking forward to a couple of good videos tomorrow. Tune in to Midwest Sports Net. God bless you all, and have a really good night. Thanks for being a part of tonight's show.